So next on our agenda, we have Ailey France, MP, Federal Minister for Dixon from the Australian Labor Party. So Ailey France is a Moreton Bay local living in Arana Hills with her son. She has worked as a journalist and communications manager and is a world champion para-athlete. As a working single mum, I don't understand how people work and have children, so even more impressive. Ali understands how hard it is to juggle the pressures of the rising bills. She knows that the Albanese government tax cuts for every Australian, electricity rebates, cheaper medicines, fee-free TAFE, expanded paid parental leave will help families across Dixon. I will, again, let everyone read the rest of your bio, but Ailey, thank you for being here today. I will hand over to you. Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, thank you Ben, and thank you Emma for your insightful words on leadership. I am with you. I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and in particular to First Nations people here today with a disability. I acknowledge our wonderful NDIS Minister, Jenny McAllister. Since becoming a new Member of Parliament, we've had lots of good chats. And I see Jenny listening. I see how dedicated you are to working with our community to deliver a better NDIS and better outcomes overall for people with a disability. Thank you for being for us. If you had have told teenage Ailey France that she would one day be a Member of Parliament, I think she would have choked on her Weet-Bix. And if you then told teenage Ailey France that she actually became a federal MP after losing her leg, her marriage, her son, and many times her mental health, I'm sure she'd literally lose her shit, ask for a redo or a quick exit. I mean, who would actually want that life? Well, here I am in the mud, right in the thick of it. And up to the moment I lost my Henry to leukemia, life as a disabled single mum of two gorgeous boys was actually quite the epic adventure. There was so much joy. And now, with grief, which never ever ends, it might surprise you to know I am extremely productive. I am living a fairly healthy life, a couple of wines now and then. I exercise, I laugh most days, I travel. I am financially independent and prospering, and I have love, great friendships. I dream big, and yes, I am still grieving, and that will never change. It's not the description that many would expect, but this is life for many disabled people Australia over. And many, many others are doing everything they can to get here. Little Ailey would have found this description of life with a disability hard to believe because she grew up in a world where disability was feared, ignored, pitied, where disability was a burden. It meant poverty and reliance on government supports. Not a lot has changed, which was quite apparent when I became an above-knee amputee with severe PTSD in 2011 after being run down by a car while walking my son in a stroller. I was told I would unlikely work ever again. I was told I wouldn't walk again. Lifelong pain would prevent me from doing most things. And as a result of PTSD, I really did struggle to get out of the house. And I was told I would continue to struggle to get out of the house. And for the first time in my life, I really doubted my ability to move forward, to have a good life. And it didn't help that the bar was set as low as it can go. As Graham Innes once said, the soft bigotry of low expectations was a firm barrier established very early on in my disability journey. Despite the heroic campaign efforts of our disability community over many decades, people with a disability had about the same employment outcomes in 2011 as they did 20 years prior. In 2003, the employment rate for adults with a disability was 48.9%, and by 2018, it had declined to 47.8%, compared to 80% of those without a disability. We know we take less sick days and work just as hard as able-bodied workers. We know our para-athletes are as exceptional as our able-bodied athletes. We know disabled students are as keen to learn as able-bodied students, and our activists are as passionate as those in the women's and LGBTIQI movements. But we still struggle to prosper. Many of us are still in poverty, despite the hard yards in TED Talks and corporate motivational speeches, in ambassadorships and lobbying government to move the dial, change the narrative and educate. Our activists and the Labor Party secured the NDIS, a glorious ray of light that has transformed so many lives. But there is still more to do. We yearn for better education, physical access to our local environment and communities, a job, a mortgage, to live independently, a family, a full life. We've often quietly accepted the inspirational tag, knowing that that label doesn't get us board positions, leadership roles, or even a full-time job. The human rights train didn't seem to stop for us. It passed us by. A few years after my accident, I said a big yeah, nah to all those low expectations and started looking for work, which was hard going. I've always loved work and had spent more than 20 years working as a journalist, television producer, communications manager in Australia, Hong Kong, and in London. I eventually got a part-time job after my accident while still in a wheelchair most of the time. A year in, a new acting CEO called me into his office and told me, and I quote, I wasn't worth what I was getting paid, that I should be paid less than half my current wage. There is no doubt in my mind that he would never have attempted such a hostile move had I not been working in a wheelchair most of the time. I gather he also wrongly assumed that I was so desperate for a job that I would work for next to nothing. And secondly, that I would let that behaviour fly. I kept my wage and a new CEO arrived shortly after. He picked a fight with the wrong lady. That's just one example of my lived experience, which drove me into this place of politics. There were so many physical barriers and even more attitudinal barriers. I was a pretty angry human being when I joined the Australian Labor Party in 2016. I landed in Labor Enabled, a motley crew of underutilised activists within the Labor Party, and we became a vibrant little unit of policymakers. And while our input into policy around the implementation of the NDIS and Medicare was incredibly important, it became very clear to me early on that in order to change perceptions of people with a disability inside and outside the party, We needed to be at the top table. At the time, there had never been a woman with a disability elected to the House of Representatives, and only a couple of men since Federation. We needed to be seen as potential candidates, as potential MPs, as MPs. Dixon was widely considered unwinnable while Peter Dutton was in the seat, and while many people saw it as wasted time and energy, I saw it as opportunity. Fast forward through pre-selection, 3 absolutely gruelling campaigns over 7 years against one of the most prolific politicians of our time, and here I am, the new member for Dixon. One of the first women with a disability to be elected to the House of Representatives, the member for Pearce, Tracy Roberts, is with me. Yes, and the first person to take out an opposition leader, that's me. And I have a clear focus on delivering for my Dixon community as a whole and on the commitments we made before the election, but with a particular focus on my passions, the NDIS, disability employment, health and Medicare. I absolutely love the NDIS. I love that Labor created it, and I love that we will always make it better. The NDIS is dignity, it is opportunity and independence for people with significant disability. It is a gateway to fulfilled, happy, productive lives. But it must deliver. It must shift the dial. It must be safe. It must be equitable. It must be sustainable. The public must have confidence in the scheme, and people with a disability must be at the centre of the scheme. The NDIS and wider disability and health supports must be the pathway to better employment outcomes, more independent living and housing options, improved community attitudes and engagement in the community, better access to mainstream education. Reducing stigma must be part of it. We took a huge step when we set up the NDIS, but I believe we took a few steps back over the past 10 years or so. It is not delivering on these aspirations, on my aspirations, and it is not delivering for the people who need it most. The NDIS became a rorter's paradise and a postcode lottery. I know this, providers know this, and the general public knows this. We are livid that the scheme over 9 years under the coalition was allowed to disintegrate. Fraud, inequity, and a complete lack of safeguards for participants. I know the majority of providers are good and provide good quality services, and the needs of people with a disability are at the very heart of everything you do. I know you want the rorters out too, particularly the ones who pose with their Porsches and fancy cars and holiday homes on social media. As soon as we came to government in 2022, we ordered a review, and what I heard was worse than I had ever anticipated as somebody who has been championing for the NDIS since my accident in 2011. There were no basic fraud or compliance controls in the 9 long years the Coalition were running the NDIS, and that's not my assessment, that comes from the National Audit Office. 0 controls. We're fixing that. The fact that the states and territories were given the green light to step away, to stop being the provider of last resort, to stop delivering support when no other provider was willing to set up in a tiny country town, to stop providing support to those who need support but don't qualify for the NDIS. This has left a deep hole in our mainstream systems of support. I spoke with the mum of a participant a couple of years ago who was absolutely thrilled her adult son was able to move into purpose-built independent living designed to his needs. The first time as a man in his 30s, he'd been able to live away from his parents. But when he moved in, he was unable to get nursing support despite having the funding for it. He lived a 2-hour drive from Brisbane in a large regional town where there are many participants but 0 providers of nursing care. He tried desperately to get the states back involved in his care, and the alternative was to go back to his parents or a nursing home. Sadly, we know this case is not isolated. There is no choice for people living in regional and remote areas. Even if you have a fully funded high needs plan, there's nowhere to spend it. We know children with autism wait too long for diagnosis and early intervention, and that while kids in our cities are better able to get access to early intervention supports, kids in regional and remote areas and those from disadvantaged backgrounds really struggle to get anything. That is why foundational supports and thriving kids is so important. We need support for all kids, no matter where you live or your socio-economic status. Support from state-run health agencies, in-school supports, and non-NDIS support basically disappeared under the coalition. That is why so many people are desperate to get on the NDIS, because there's literally no other option. Those outside the original remit of the scheme have been falling through the cracks for years, and those cracks are now deep chasms of inequity. We are now doing everything we can to renegotiate with the states to bring them back in, ensuring everyone gets the supports they need, and that begins with foundational supports and thriving kids. The 2022 review is a roadmap for change, difficult, hard change. We are on that road and we are determined to get it done. We must admit the current system is not equitable. There are people with significant disability that are not getting the support they need. I say to people with a disability and their families, we have your back. We know that change is frightening for participants, for providers. It's particularly scary for those who rely on the NDIS every day to have a shower, to eat fresh, healthy food, to get out into the community. We will walk with you, and we are listening. I constantly remind myself when I am sat in the House of Representatives, I'm still shook by that, of how I got to that unique place, that I must stay clear-eyed, to be an advocate for my community and the disability community, and to ensure that my journey is reflected in the work I do in our nation's parliament every single day. I am obviously no longer fighting for a decent wage, thank God, a full-time job, the right to prosper, for access to supportive technology or help around the home, like I did after my accident in 2011. But there is a very long queue of Aussies who are still fighting for those things. In 2022, 56% of working-aged adults with a disability were employed, up from 47.8% in 2018. After 20 years of stagnation, we're finally doing a little bit better. That gives me hope. It tells me that supporting people with a disability to live their best lives leads to employment and better economic outcomes for our community. The NDIS, wider disability supports, Medicare, the DSP, and our employment services are all part of that hope. Providers are part of that hope. I hope Aussies see me and see disability. A hard worker, independent, productive, useful, mother, leader, sporty. These are my labels. Me being elected to our nation's parliament is also hope. I trust I have made it clear that I will do everything I can in my new position to help shape how these systems work with Jenny and my Labor colleagues in the best interests of people with a disability. The work continues. Thank you.